Yeah, links aren't that important because they don't care about link juice.
AI overviews will kill low quality blogging.
Yeah, that's a trend. Backlinks are an important measure still of, the authority of your website.
And I want you to tell, is this a trend or a LinkedIn nonsense? Many companies still think off-page SEO means get links, buy increasingly, build recognizable, buy links and all this stuff. But increasingly, it like build recognizable trust signals across the web.
That's where digital PR becomes really important right now. And then again, collaborating with PR teams and brand teams, marketing, sales, everything that we're doing.
A lot of companies think SEO is working because traffic keeps going up.
So, they're referencing sites with like domain rating of 2, 1, 0, nothing.
This is Adsy Talks. Adsy Talks. Adsy Talks.
A lot of companies think SEO is working because traffic keeps going up. Meanwhile, sales team complain about the lead quality. Product teams launch pages nobody searches for. AI answers questions without sending clicks, and leadership has no idea why visibility isn't translating into the revenue. So today's question is, has SEO become less about rankings and more about fixing how companies operate? Welcome to Adsy Talks, the podcast where we connect SEO to actual business growth. I'm Anthony, Head of Customer Experience at Adsy, and today's guest is Kristina Bergwall, SEO and AEO Director at Precis. Kristina works at the intersection of SEO, AI visibility, digital strategy, and organizational collaboration, which honestly feels very relevant right now because search itself is becoming more fragmented and more complex than ever before. And one thing that I've noticed from your talks, Kristina, and posts, that you don't really speak about SEO as an isolated channel anymore, and you talk a lot more about systems, collaboration, AI visibility, and how organizations structure information internally. So let's start here. What's the biggest thing companies still misunderstand about modern SEO?
I think the short answer to that question is that they need to collaborate more, right? But I think there is a misconception of what SEO is still in terms of a lot of companies buying SEO services as a separate thing. We add on a little bit of SEO on the side, or, sometimes it's more of an afterthought than anything. And what obviously I argue for is that a lot of the things that you mentioned in your intro now, there's a lot of things changing in, AI search and, the results that we're seeing, or do we even have the right KPIs? And for us to align ourselves to this new reality, we can't just have SEO working on the sidelines or any of our channels working in isolation. We need to come together and really think about how can we work together in this new landscape to make it work. And I genuinely believe that that's where we need to focus our efforts and finding ways to organize ourselves differently than we have before to survive in this new LLM driven landscape.
Yes, that is true. And as always, most problems are actually communication problems, and this translates to SEO as well. And one pattern I've noticed from the customer experience at Etsy is that clients often come in and they expect SEO behave almost like paid ads. They expect a very direct relationships, links in, rankings up, sales appear, but in reality, the frustration usually starts when traffic grows, but the business results don't grow at the same speed. And I think this creates a reality dangerous situation because SEO dashboard can look healthy, but internally the company starts questioning whether SEO is actually working. And when you see that disconnect, when the traffic is fine but the leads are flat, where do you usually look at first?
It's a reality for many right now that results don't look like they used to. Either you might be getting the same traffic or might even be generating new traffic through AI chatbots and anything. But then it doesn't translate to the kind of results that you're used to seeing. And that's because the landscape is changing, right? So that's also another reason for why we need to align ourselves and chat about what's actually going on here. and what is relevant right now to have a look at in terms of results, because traffic doesn't necessarily doesn't necessarily lead to leads or conversions, right? And also, a lot of people right now are seeing a steep decline in traffic. They might be seeing a steady, even increase in leads, still with less traffic. So there's a lot of different scenarios right now that we're dealing with clients. And we did a data study or Precis a couple of months ago, looking at what's happening with AI overviews, intercepting a lot of the value in terms of answering the questions, maybe a lot of the time top of the funnel, that leads to a lot of businesses not having this traffic reach their websites. And one of the industries that stick out is B2B, where a lot of people are getting their answers, right? And AI synthesizes this perfect answer for them to reduce the research time massively. So when that traffic actually reaches the website, it, they're more likely to convert. So they're seeing the opposite of that scenario. And a lot of other companies like e-commerce having this slightly opposite situation right now. But then again, we're at the cusp of agentic commerce. So again, a lot of change right now. A lot of people are probably very unsettled by what they're seeing because it's different to what they're used to, right?
The human nature people are always afraid of changes because they're used to something steady, something that works, something that is already established. And when something changes, especially at the pace it changes right now, recent years, of course, the first reaction is like panic, frustration. Yeah. So, and speaking about like the collaboration, in terms of the teams, I want to talk about the which collaboration between what team actually creates the biggest impact and why. We can, if we take, for example, SEO team and product team, SEO and paid media, SEO and PR, or SEO and UX. How do you think? What is the biggest impact between the teams that I just
I would say all of them need to work together, right? But I think there's different levels of impact really depending on your situation. I think SEO and UX and CRO and content, that whole bit, that's how we organize ourselves at Precis. They work really entwined with each other. We don't just want to, send traffic to the website. It needs to convert as well. That's obviously very important. But I think if we're talking impact, the most important kind of place to start focusing, if you want to start somewhere, is ensuring that SEO and dev, or people being in charge of actually implementing changes on the website, work really closely together, because this can be very siloed, and that disconnects create a lot of problem usually. And unfortunately, I still see it in a lot of places where company. This goes back to the whole issue of like buying SEO in kind of isolation or as an add-on. You buy an SEO scope and think like, oh, they're just going to sort out this SEO stuff out, and they're not considering the fact that everything that they do is obviously to do with the website, and the website needs to go through loads of changes from the recommendations that we as SEOs do. And they're not taking into account the fact that, that's time from the dev team, that's time from, maybe another dev agency that they don't even have those resources from. So I'd say that's where you can find the most impact. If you can align, the recommendations all the way through to implementation, if that's your SEO team and your dev team, for example, then working together, that's where that collaboration can have a really big impact. Because if you don't have your technical SEO in place, you won't have anything. That's the foundation of it all. Then obviously the impact of working together with digital PR and the brand team or the PR team, as one with SEO, can have a real big impact. If you're in a space where your brand awareness and you need to create like authority within LLMs to be more visible for AI search traffic, then that becomes a really big impact area. So that, different areas can have a different impact. But I think it's important here, right? The points that I'm making currently is that we don't think about all these teams as separate bits. We're thinking about what we're actually trying to achieve here. We need to build some kind of, call it what you want, but like a visibility team that includes the competencies from all these other traditional channels into one. Yeah.
That is true because we are living in the new reality, but we're still facing the old problems. So visibility today is built, of course, across systems, not the separate channels. And one thing that we see at Etsy from customer support side is that companies often optimize for rankings before they even fully understand how they want to position themselves. And then they later then realize we're attracting traffic, but not the audience we actually want. Does AI make that positioning problem even more dangerous right now?
Um, the short answer to that is yes, absolutely. I think you can still fool the system if you wish in some places to kind of rank for something to drive traffic or something specific. But even more so with AI search, you need to really think about how you build authority within your, whatever you want to call it, your topic clusters or, your product areas. Or, you need to really think about how do we build authority? How do we create the content, position ourselves online across all platforms? And what you do on your website is only so much. It's, where people talk about you, or they're talking about you on Reddit or on social or other websites. Is that brand messaging consistent? Are they talking about the things that you actually sell or the services that you provide? And in what way are they doing that? And that's how you're going to create visibility in the future that we're going to, which is obviously LLM driven search reality. We're all going to be just in AI mode very soon. So we need to make sure that, the LLMs taking, understanding where the LLMs are taking information from and how they understand your brand and your services, and then build on that. So that's where data comes into it as well, right? Like making sure that we have the right, taking decisions off the right data. That's also where the industry is moving quickly right now.
Yeah, so it's always about the easiness to understand and between people as the same way between AI and brands. So AI rewards brands that are easiest to understand. So it's all about this understanding. And one idea that really stuck with me, like this idea reframes SEO in something closer to organizational clarity. And if the team describe the company differently internally, AI probably understands the brand differently externally too.
Mm, exactly. Because what happens right now, if we're thinking about an LLM driven reality online and such, every activity that you do as a business that has something to do with communication outwards or creating content, which is, across a few different disciplines, so it's ads and social, PR, brand, marketing, sales, everything. If they're not consistent in their messaging, you know, that is the most important thing. There's that consistency that LLMs are looking for to have a really clear understanding of what you stand for. And to have that, all of these departments, if you wish, needs to have the same understanding of what we're trying to achieve. That we need to align ourselves a lot around the same KPIs, the same goals, the same vision, the same understanding of, what we're trying to achieve together. I think the real danger for organizations is keep on working again like siloed but with different kind of goals, and measuring success in very different ways. We just need to gather around each other and think about, what we're actually trying to achieve as a business. I'm just assuming here that businesses don't want to rely on paid traffic, but I'm sure there'd be some reliance on paid traffic somewhere, and that's an important part of demand and whatnot. But we need to like come together and think about what we're actually trying to achieve together, and how can we have the same KPIs here. And I argue in that article I wrote in Search Engine Land about it goes down to little things like having your personal OKRs in the business tied to obviously the overall OKRs the business have, which should be in line with being a visibility first business, because that's going to be so important. You're going to have nothing in the future if LLMs aren't going to favor you. If we think about the future of just being, in this AI mode reality.
Yeah, that's true. And we all need to change, but sometimes people think that they will wait until the last moment and they will make this change. But it's about how you change over time. So you can start right now, and step by step, you can make this change in order to be relevant in future. And there is a pattern that we've seen in SaaS over the last few years with companies, for example, like HubSpot. They scaled massive amounts of informational SEO content very successfully. But over time, the industry started realizing that not all traffic is equally valuable from a business perspective. And eventually, there was this shift towards more product led, high intent visibility instead of pure informational scale. And do you think AI accelerates that shift?
I think to some extent it does because it forces us all to think a little bit more intently about what we're trying to build. It goes back to, where we're trying to build authority and awareness. And I think also an important point here to make is sentiment and the understanding that LLMs will have around your brand and your products. And that also comes back to, having great products or services because the reviews that it generates, how people talk about what you do is going to have a massive impact on your future success as well. So I think maybe that's a slightly different perspective maybe on your question, but what I would also have a real think about. That's how you need to think about these things instead.
Yeah, I agree with you because, as you mentioned earlier, right now, low intent information queries can be easily answered by AI before users even click on that link. So AI is becoming like a filter for low value clicks right now. And in a strange way, we can say that losing some traffic because of this AI overview might actually improve the business quality. How do you think?
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. I mean, if you're a business that have all the answers to your potential customers' questions or problems, and you're showing up in ChatGPT, Gemini, or in, AI overviews to being the reference or the source of that answer, then you're building your brand awareness and your place in the market. And then that's of course important to think about. Like I said, it goes into, who are you trying to what you're trying to build for your brand, for LLMs to understand about you, and that's where that will show up, as a result.
Yes, yes, that is absolutely true. And Christina, right now, I want to try something with you. It will be our interactive segment of sorts. And let's play this game. Who is secretly responsible for the problem? I will give you the business problem, and you tell me which department is most likely causing this problem. The first situation, traffic grows, but demo requests they collapse. What department is can be responsible for that?
Oh, so I'm thinking about it if this was one of our clients and that was the situation, I'd be like, well, let's just activate CRO and UX straight away. I'd be like, if we're driving the traffic, yeah, that's probably where the problem could be. However, I would also make sure that, what is this traffic? Where, how has it come in? What are people expecting to find when they clicked onto our website? Are we building our authority in an area where it's not relevant for what we're actually selling? So content strategy in combination with CRO, I would probably look at and UX.
Yeah, that's actually usually is the main issue there. Okay, next one. AI never cites your brand. Who is responsible?
Ooh, the LLM is responsible. Who's responsible? God, again, I think that's like everyone's problem, right? If not visible at all, that could be a tech problem, right? Can LLMs crawl our, can they even read our content? Is it discoverable? So that could potentially be a tech problem. Or it's just a matter of fact that it's a new brand. We don't have enough information about us out there. Do we have thin content on the website? But it sounds as though if we're not visible at all, we're probably not visible in terms of our websites not being readable.
Yeah, I do agree because usually AI searches the information across the web. So it's not only your website, it actually looks like in different places. So it's either a massive problem that none of your teams responsible for visibility are actually doing their job. Yeah, or this is like a technical problem where something is off that AI cannot extract this information.
But it's an important point that you made there, because obviously, if it is a brand that exists outside of their own website, which most brands do if you're established, then that'll be weird if you were totally invisible. So it's probably not just a website problem. It's probably you're just a small brand with no brand awareness. So maybe sort tech issues and start building your brand.
Yep, that's true. Okay, let's move to the next one. Users bounce despite strong rankings. Who's responsible for that?
Oh gosh, it could be anyone, because you think about like why they're bouncing. If we are driving the right traffic, if we're ranking for stuff that's actually relevant for what we sell, are we communicating it correctly on the website? You know, is it, are we making it clear? Are we giving people false hope clicking on and then realizing, oh, this is really difficult to use, or I'm not finding what I'm looking for? It's probably like an on-page problem, right? So it could be tech or content or a combination. I think the ownership of what happens when the client hits the website. But in these scenarios as well, I think we need to think about the target audience as well, right? Who are we? What are we selling, and who are we sending to the website? Are we sending people who are, not able to make the decision? Is it hard to fill in that form? Are we driving traffic for people just in the discovery phase, and we're selling them really hard to, book that demo, and they're not ready for it? There could be, yeah, it could be a lot of issues there, I guess.
Yeah, actually, you've mentioned the one of the possible issues we've discussed with my previous guest, Ian Udom, because sometimes it's the mismatch between the search expectation and the landing page. So yeah, you can track traffic, but it will not convert into anything because yeah, there is a mismatch between this thing. Okay, the next one will be very relevant to your topic, to your expertise. SEO team publishes content, sales never uses.
Yeah, so this is like a core part of the problem, or like you said, something I kind of talk about a lot, or infringing on that topic. There is a little bit of disconnect from the tradition of what SEO used to be, a bit behind closed doors and no one really knowing what it is. And I think there's this tendency of, for everyone really who's in like an expert area, but like to communicate from an inside out perspective. As SEOs, we want to talk about like all the little details and the tactics that we used and little changes we've seen because of this and this algorithm and whatnot. And the people listening to that is just kind of, how is that important to me? I think as SEOs, we have a real responsibility and an opportunity right now because of what's happening in the industry to really step up to the plate and translate what we think is really cool and interesting stuff, right, into like the business impact. Because otherwise, no one's going to listen to us, and the sales team are not going to be able to do anything with that information if we don't talk their way. How is this important both internally? How is this important to all the other stakeholders? What's important for them? We need to put ourselves in the listener's shoes more than we already are.
Yeah, and we have few more to go, and this one is actually like really close to me because I used to work in one startup and we faced like exactly this problem that I'm going to read right now. Paid ads convert better than organic traffic.
Oh gosh, that hurts. That hurts as an SEOer. You're like, what? What is happening? But maybe that goes into a lot of other things that we just talked about. It's the targeting. I guess the paid team is doing a great job at targeting the right audience, perhaps, or the SEO efforts might be not so good at driving the right kind of traffic for the content that we have on the website. That's an interesting setup as an SEO. That would have bothered you a lot, I bet. But yeah, I think there's a lot to look at there with like who is coming in, like do they have the expectations of what they see when they land on the website? So what was the solution? I'm getting really curious now. Or what was your resolution there?
Yeah, so as a startup, there is a common problem when you get paid ads and you get the leads that are actually they know what they look for and you have the solution. But in terms of SEO, we were not ready yet. We had a very like small visibility. We didn't have a lot of content out there published. So yeah, it was quite slow, and eventually it was resolved in two stages. First of all, it was resolved over time, and secondly, we changed our SEO specialist.
That's
Yeah.
sometimes the resolution to some of these issues, yes.
Yeah, so actually, of course, with time we gain visibility, obviously, and yeah, another specialist was better at his job than the previous one. So yeah, sometimes it's like the problem is in both. It's like both people and the actual visibility. So, and the last one is actually a little too close to me because it refers to the time when I was working in the startup. Founder rewrites headlines personally at midnight.
Yeah, that's a bit of a tricky spot to be in. I'd love to hear your answer then on how you dealt with that. But again, I think it comes down to this whole communication piece, right? Of how do we communicate the value of SEO and what we're doing and the impact our work has without overwhelming people with the technical side of it that they're not interested in, like how can we own what we do in this specific scenario without other people getting involved and trying to like yeah, initially just tripping us up by communicating the value of us owning the strategy and what we're doing and getting them to buy in, I guess, from the very top of like, well, if you keep on doing what you're doing, we'll see results. Because then I assuming in this situation, maybe he felt like, oh, I have a better idea how this could be done. That didn't align with like the bigger the bigger vision, the bigger strategy for what you were trying to achieve with the SEO strategy. So I guess again, communicating that value to get that buy-in, it's a good piece of a needed piece of work that needs to go into to a lot of collaborations.
Mhm. Yeah, I do agree with you on that because it can be both. It can be personal issue, so it can be a bottleneck founder, and at the same time, it could be a scaling problem because sometimes you grow faster than you have like free hands, spare hands. So yeah, it can be both in different scenarios. Okay, and we slowly with this AI visibility questions come to our second segment. I want to talk to you with you about the answer economy because I know that you work a lot with AEO, answer engine optimization, and I think a lot of people still hear that term and they assume it's just SEO with AI buzzwords. But from your perspective, what fundamentally changes when search becomes answer driven instead of click driven?
This is a big discussion right now because people have strong opinions of, AO is the same as SEO. We shouldn't be calling it different things, and obviously calling it geo or AI search, whatever you want to call it. People are calling it different things, and I think that essentially what we're all doing is SEO. We're optimizing for search visibility, and AI chatbots are search engines as well, but they're answer engines because the searches are different. And it's not necessarily that we're searching in a different way, like long questions or that kind of thing. But it's not really to do with the user behavior changing in terms of us calling it different things. It's more about the retrieval of the answers, right? Which is different. Because in traditional search engines, we have a list that is ordered in a way because of its relevance to your search term. And now all of a sudden we have an answer that is synthesized of content from all sorts of places, and sometimes results lined up as well, but based on a lot of other criterias, right? So therefore we need to look at SEO and AO a little bit differently. And it comes down to how we look at the data. So that's essentially the answer to everything, you know. We're using tools like Profound and Peak to get insights into what's actually, how brands actually showing up in different prompts. How much of a specific area do they own in terms of authority? What's their share of model, i.e., how are they showing up in certain models like ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatnot? So, like, based on that data and, where LLMs are finding citations to rank brands, that's kind of the difference right now. So it's like, it's just an extension of SEO. We've gone through, so many years of SEO changing a lot, new algorithms, different way of thinking of content, EAT, wherever it might be. And this is just another layer of the SEO game of like, yeah, you need to show up in Google and Bing, but now you also need to show up in ChatGPT. But it's still, it's still part of the whole ecosystem, especially since I believe we're all going towards like AI mode scenario of search. We're not going to see any more template links in a short space of time. I just rambled on now. I can't even remember your question. I could speak about this all day, you know?
Yeah, that is true. Well, actually, it was the perfect answer that was which to my next follow-up question is when I was looking through your post, through your articles, I loved one thing that I've seen. You've mentioned that Google ranks pages while AI evaluates entities. And this feels like one of the biggest mindset shifts that happening right now. And can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah, so I guess it goes back to a lot of things that we talked about in terms of like building authority online and how you think about content in a slightly different way online. And goes back into some of the fun exercise we did now and like some cases and stuff. It's about thinking about how, how are we answering the questions in our content to build authority in the areas that we want to, that is catered towards our ICPs or, our target audience or whatever. So it's like building that authority and your knowledge within your entities on your website and thinking more broadly then that consistency we talked about across the web, build authority within your areas that you want to have visibility within. So that's kind of where the big general difference is. But it's not really that different from thinking about the tactics of working with SEO, right? So we've kind of for many years wanting to build, our topic pillars and topic clusters and, to build authority within our areas. So it's not a new idea as such, but again, coming back to like looking at the data of what's happening and what LLMs are doing and what to kind of the content and what they're citing to feed that data into our strategy, then we can align our SEO strategy more to be visible both across what, algorithms are pulling up for results and also what LLMs are pulling up.
Yes, and actually, this connects to something that I see often at Etsy while I'm working with customers. Many companies still think off-page SEO means get links, buy increasingly, build recognizable buy links, and all this stuff. But increasingly, it should feel like build recognizable trust signals across the web, not about the links anymore. It's more about this signals that should be everywhere across the web for the AI chatbots to get them. And so, if backlinks were historically about passing authority, what AI system actually looks for right now?
Um, yeah, links aren't that important. And obviously, I worked a lot with in the off-page SEO area and, background in digital PR and that kind of thing. So this is very close to my heart. And the difference in essence right now is that we used to focus so much on like domain authority or domain rating for a good link, like in a good backlink profile, which, that still makes sense. But then when we're talking about LLMs, they're referencing sites with like domain rating of 2, 1, 0, nothing, because they have a little snippet of relevant content for the question that you're asking rather. So that all of a sudden we can't look at links the same way when it comes to LLMs because they don't care about link juice and all that kind of stuff. They care about like having relevant answers from somewhere that looks as though it has the authority to say something about that topic. Right. So that's the big difference there.
Yes, and also I've noticed that it feels that brands now they are competing not just for rankings anymore, but for inclusion in the answer AI answer layer itself. And how do you think does this make digital PR more important again?
100%. Yes. And we need to reevaluate what digital PR is. Because if we're stuck in the kind of link building era, digital PR as an extension of link building, then we're so focused on domain rating and domain authority and what we just talked about. But right now, if we're talking about, I'm talking a lot about like the revival of digital PR and the fact that we need to, build that, like you were saying, the trust signals across the web, right? And the authority building that across the web. That's where digital PR becomes really important right now. And then again, collaborating with PR teams and brand teams, marketing, sales, everything that we're doing. So there's a shift there, but we need to think about it a little bit differently. We can't focus so much on like what is a good quality backlink to have, or where should we be mentioned just because it's a big publication. It's so much more about relevance. Where's relevant for us to show up, both for like training and LLM point of view, but also for the humans, right? Where are our customers or our potential customers? What are they reading? Where's going to be visible for them? Where can we start a conversation about our products or services? Or, is it, your digital PR strategy might be focused on Reddit or might be like actual YouTube. It becomes so much more. We have this like smorgasbord of all sorts of more stuff we can think about within our digital PR strategy now, which I think is like super exciting to think about.
hmm And sometimes it feels like the right now the real competitor is not another website anymore. It's the AI summary overview. Right now, I want to try something else. We'll have this interactive segment where I'm going to read the statements, and I want you to tell is this a trend or a LinkedIn nonsense. So we hear a lot of informational noise right now related to AI. Obviously, AI is being a really big thing over the past few years, and but we need to divide what is like reality and what is just words, noises, something like about the hype. So let's start with this one. We'll start with an easy one and we'll dive deep into some more interesting statements. So the first statement will be again, you just need to tell is this a trend or LinkedIn nonsense? Clicks will matter less than mentions.
I think it's nonsense. Yeah, mentions are going to be important, but somehow you need to make it click at some point. If we, because our final KPI is going to be conversions or leads, right? Sometime at some point you need to click.
Yes, this is true because when all this AI overhaul started, everyone was afraid that eventually no one like is going to use traditional SEO because of the AI. But a few years later, we realized that AI is a great tool. It helps a lot, as we already talked with you. It's a great layer when you get the information without the extensive research. But at the same time, you still it still connects with your brand, with your business. People actually need to go to you to actually get something because AI will give them information, but the AI will not give them the actual product.
But then again, if we're talking about agentic commerce, then maybe mentions are more important because then you just tell your agent to do the purchase for you, to do the click for you.
Yes. In this way, yeah, I do agree. Okay, next one. Most SEO teams will merge into a broader growth teams.
I agree. Well, that this is not just LinkedIn nonsense. I'd say this is the future, and it's the future that I hope for. And I'm a half glass full type of person. I'm very optimistic. So this is maybe more of wishful thinking than the very near reality that we're facing. But I'm hopeful.
I'm optimistic as well because, yeah, every problem is the experience that will be a life lesson that will make you think better, that will make you a better person, like make you evolve. So yeah, I do agree with you on that. Okay, the next one is the following. Brand search will eventually matter more than backlinks.
That's a trend, right? That's a question, trend or nonsense. I think it's a trend because of what we spoke about. We're still in this in-between period, right? And these backlinks are an important measure still of, the authority of your website, because people mentioning you and linking to you is an indication of, how people speak about you online. It's a vouch, like it's a vote for you as a business. But if we're looking into the future, your brand team is going to have a large impact on the authority that you build in LLMs.
Yes, and also speaking about the LLMs and AI, how do you think AI overviews will kill low quality blogging?
No, I mean, yeah, low quality blogging, that's going to probably die out for other reasons. But I think, yes, in terms of like low quality blogging where people just trying to like answer questions or get traffic to answer questions, absolutely. Yes.
The last one, I think like it's kind of a statement, but nevertheless, the future of SEO looks more like systems design.
100%. It's a trend. Businesses are not going to survive without making this a structural layer to their business, because the businesses that keep on working the way they are now in silos are not going to be the ones that get ahead. Yeah, I truly believe that.
hmm Also, one thing that I find like really interesting in your perspective is that you talk about SEO leadership almost like an operational leadership, not just marketing execution.
No, exactly that's what it is. So I think it's the way that you run your business need to be done with SEO in mind. And I'm just not saying that because I have a background in SEO, but of course I'm going to think that because that's my perspective. But if you as a business have a priority to be visible online in the future, then that needs to be integrated into your operations, how you collaborate internally, how you work as a business, where you put your focus, where you put your resources towards, because it cannot function in such a silo as it is right now in a lot of cases. That's going to be the failure of many businesses, unfortunately.
Yes, and you've also talked about people development being a part of SEO success. Why do you think so many companies underestimate the human side of search performance?
I think because it is an area that is very performance driven, right? Essentially, there's so much focus on, just do these tactics and we're going to get these results. And then, great, dashboards are going to look awesome. Um, but we're in this changing times now where, obviously we talked about collaboration being what can actually drive the results. And we can't just go in then and have anyone executing the tactics and then getting the results. That doesn't work anymore. We have such more of a complex landscape ahead of us. So we can't just hire someone who's like skilled at what they do. We need to hire people who can see the bigger picture and want to be curious or are curious about what's happening and how can I translate what I know or my expertise is, like we spoke about earlier, into other people in the business understanding why this is a priority for them to invest or, to give this space and resources. So that's why I am really passionate about this area of, thinking about the people that we have right now and who can drive this forward, because it's not so much about tactics anymore. It's about the overall operations of a business and how we position SEO at the core of it.
Yes, and from the customer experience side, I will also tell that one thing that I constantly see is that companies growing fastest usually have a very clear internal communication. And I see that if you have a good internal communication, all the processes start working much better. Everyone understands who the customer is, what the positioning is, and what the success actually means. And honestly, the chaotic companies almost always struggle with SEO too, as I know.
100% is very much to do with that clear communication, the transparency, the people understanding exactly what their remit is, what expectations they have, and also the team feeling of, working towards the same goal together. And then again, like things like having really clear OKRs that both, are personal to where you want to do, but also ties into the overall vision of being a visibility first company.
Yeah, and I also want right now we were talking about the actual facts, and I want to talk about with you about like maybe some philosophical side of this question. So, how do you think? What does the elite SEO leadership will look like in 2026, maybe even 2027?
It's maybe utopia, but we need that deep technical understanding and capabilities at the same time. It's a bit of an enigma, I guess, but at the same time as we have the skills, that really interpersonal skills, communication skills of translating these very deep technical bits into business goals and business impact, without that inside out perspective, but rather the outside in perspective of what's important for others, the stakeholders in this. So it's two kind of like distinct areas, and I've seen this for many years, but it becomes more clear now. Now we still need these really technical people, the people who have interest in vibe coding late at night. And we also need the people who are, there with the clients talking about, real business decisions. Should we launch this new range, or how do we rearrange our department, wherever it might be, being there as a key stakeholder to communicate like what we need and how we need to organize ourselves and what we should do, where there's most impact from an SEO point of view, hand in hand with C-suite on, all the decisions to do with the business. So there's two kind of like, if that could be one person, that's a big feat. That's a big job. So I think we need a wide variety of skills, but what aligns these two roles or skill set, if we're talking about what we need in people now and going forward in our industry, is that curiosity. I know I go on about curiosity a lot of times, but it's such an important thing to have when things are changing, and it comes with an openness. You can't be curious without having a genuinely open mind for how things are changing, and that's super important right now. Be open to the fact that there is change and being interested in finding out how to pivot towards it. And yeah, communication skills all around. We just need to be better in our professions to communicate the value of what we're actually doing in a way that makes sense to others.
Yes, that's actually true. And Christina, for our finish line, I prepared the question that I like to ask my guests, and I want to hear your take on them. So the first question would be, how do we think, what is the most overrated SEO metric, like the vanity metric?
Well, right now, I'd say rankings. I'm just a little bit sick of having conversations about specific rankings on specific keywords because it does not matter that much a lot of the time.
That is absolutely true. And how do you think, what is the most underrated growth channel?
Ooh, underrated growth channel. Right now, I'm really snowed into YouTube. That's very specific though. But I think organic social and, the whole thing we talked about a little bit earlier with, how people talk about you online. But I think YouTube is just a massive undervalued resource for many reasons.
And how do you think, what is the biggest mistake companies usually make with AI content?
I think go with a little bit too hard. We're trying to just like let's answer people's questions, and there might be a wide range of questions that your potential customers have, and then maybe assuming what those questions might be, and then just like answering loads of them instead of thinking about what we talked about earlier, building entities, building authority on what matters, and then answering those questions in a way that is very readable, obviously, to LLMs, but also gives the actual reader, the human that will also read that content, a lot of value.
Yes, and in this, as I've mentioned, everything is changing so fast, and some people are panicking, some are trying new approaches, and I think the best approach is to experiment, to try something new, see if it works, and continue doing it. So, and my biggest takeaway from our conversation is that visibility alone is not enough. The companies will win the search if they have a clear communication, internal, external, and of course, increasingly to AI systems as well. Yes. So, Christina, thank you very much for this conversation, for joining us. I just wanted also to add to everyone who is listening us, if this episode changed the way you think about SEO, send it to someone in your company who still thinks that SEO is just rankings and traffic. So yeah, subscribe to Adsy Talks. We'll see you in the next episode. And Christina, I wish you best of luck. Thank you again very much, and
Thank you.
talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.
This is Adsy Talks.